Welcome to this presentation on government regulation of business. I'll explain how government rules shape the environment in which businesses operate, including the ways regulation can constrain activity, protect stakeholders, and influence professional decision-making. The central idea is that regulation is not separate from business strategy. It is part of the environment every organization must understand. As we move through the presentation, we'll consider why these rules matter across industries and why regulatory awareness is important for every professional. Markets are powerful tools for creating value, but they do not always produce fair or safe outcomes on their own. Regulation exists to address these market failures. It protects consumers from fraud, unsafe product, and unfair business practices. It also promotes competition by limiting monopolistic behavior and giving businesses a fair chance to compete. Finally, regulation safeguards society from externalities, such as pollution, where the cause of an activity affect others but may not be reflected in market prices. In this way, regulation helps markets serve the broader public interest. Antitrust regulation is designed to keep markets competitive and protect consumers. Its central purpose is to prevent companies from gaining excessive market power in ways that raise costs, limit choice, or discourage innovation. The Sherman Act of 1890 targets monopolies and agreements that restrain trade. The Clayton Act, passed in 1914, addresses practices such as price discrimination and anti-competitive mergers. Also in 1914, the FTC Act created the Federal Trade Commission, giving the government a dedicated agency to enforce fair competition. Together, these laws form a foundation of U.S. antitrust policy. Consumer protection regulation gives buyers confidence that the marketplace is honest, safe, and fair. The key idea is accountability. Businesses must stand behind what they say and do. First, truth in advertising rules prohibit deceptive or misleading marketing claims. Second, product safety requirements, including mandatory standards set by the CPSC, help protect consumers from dangerous goods. Third, fair credit laws such as TILA require lenders to clearly disclose important borrowing terms. Together, these protections make it easier for consumers to evaluate products, understand agreements, and make informed decisions. Environmental regulation addresses a market gap. Pollution can impose costs on communities and ecosystems that businesses may not include in their decisions. The EPA helps enforce federal standards designed to make those impacts accountable. The Clean Air Act limits emissions from factories, power plants, and vehicles, while the Clean Water Act regulates industrial discharges into waterways and wetlands. RCRA governs hazardous waste disposal, and CERCLA supports cleanup of contaminated Superfund sites. Together, these laws reduce pollution, protect public resources, and assign greater responsibility for environmental harm. Labor and employment regulations define what employers owe their workers, creating a framework for fairness, safety, and dignity in the workplace. These requirements are more than broad principles. They create specific compliance responsibilities, and violations can carry significant consequences. At the federal level, the Department of Labor oversees most employment regulations. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, or EEOC, focuses specifically on enforcing anti-discrimination laws. Together, these agencies help establish and enforce the standards that shape workplace practices. Financial and securities regulation is designed to protect investors, preserve fair and orderly markets, and reduce the chance that problems spread across the financial system. A recurring pattern is that major crises lead to stronger oversight. The Securities Acts of 1933 and 1934 established the SEC after the Great Depression. In 2002, Sarbanes-Oxley responded to Enron by requiring greater corporate transparency. After the 2008 crisis, Dodd-Frank reshaped banking regulation. This process is ongoing, with the SEC and FINRA continually adapting rules to modern markets. Some industries carry risks and public responsibilities that demand specialized oversight. That's why dedicated regulators develop deep expertise in particular sectors, set operating standards, issue licenses, and monitor compliance over time. In healthcare, The FDA oversees drug, devices, and food safety. Transportation is divided among agencies such as the FAA, FRA, and NHTSA, covering air, rail, and road safety. Banking supervision includes the FDIC and OCC, while the FCC handles broadcasting licenses and telecommunications. The key idea is specialized regulation matched to specialized risk. The regulatory process follows a defined sequence rather than happening overnight. First, Congress passes a bill that provides the underlying authority. Then, the responsible agency proposes a rule and opens a public comment period, giving people and organizations an opportunity to respond. After reviewing that input, the agency publishes the final rule. The Administrative Procedure Act is central to this process because it requires transparency and public participation before the rule takes effect. In other words, regulation develops through a structured process, not a single decision. This slide presents a central debate. Effective regulation must balance protection with economic dynamism. Regulation can correct market failures, protect vulnerable consumers and workers, strengthen trust, and prevent systemic risks from escalating into crises. But overregulation can impose significant compliance costs, especially on small businesses. It may also limit innovation and flexibility, encourage regulatory capture, or create barriers for new competitors. The goal, then, is not zero regulation. It is smart, targeted regulation, calibrated to the real-world costs and benefits of each situation. The key takeaway is that regulation serves several complementary purposes. It protects competition, consumers, the environment, workers, and investors, while specialized regulators provide expert oversight in high-stakes industries. Together, these frameworks promote fair markets, safer products, accountability for externalities, and confidence across the economy.